Well, following the plans, I bent the rear seat backrest support tube. That went pretty well. Now I just followed the dimensions on the plan, so it's pretty straightforward. Now I did use this bender here, which is one of these that's supposed to prevent the tubing from kinking, which is good, and it worked great. I'd highly recommend it. I got that off of eBay, I think, for 150 bucks. But it works great because it actually has rollers. Let's see if I can show you here. It actually has rollers here, and the cutout in here specifically for 3/4 inch tubing. So this does 3/4 inch tubing, and then it's got a little locking mechanism here. It's actually spring loaded that keeps the tube in there. So it works great. I wouldn't have any qualms about using that again. Now what I did end up with here, as you can see, is there's some rippling on the inside of the tube because of the smaller radius that we're doing, and this is the recommended, I think it's a 3-inch radius. Now I understand that's not an issue with the tubing bender as much as it is an issue with the fact that we're using very thin wall tubing here. This is only 35 thousandths tubing, which is almost equivalent to 1 millimeter. What I would probably suggest is to go the next size up, which is 0.049, 49 thousandths, which would be a little bit thicker tubing, a little bit heavier, but it might not ripple like this on the inside. Now I'm not too concerned about the rippling, it just doesn't look as good, but I feel like the strength isn't really a concern. And I did the side bends here. The only thing I ended up with is with the side bends, because of the size of this bender, it's difficult to get this bend up as close as you want to get to the other radius, which I did, but I ended up with a little bit of a nick on the inside of here where the roller caught as I was bending it. I ended up with that on both sides. It's just a little dent. Now I think what's going to happen is when I put the support that goes on here, it's going to go pretty close to this area. It'll probably cover it up, and I'm not too worried about it. Again, it doesn't seem to be affecting it structurally, so I'm not concerned about it at this point. I did think, well, maybe I'll just make another one, but I looked on the internet and found out I think I paid $60 for this 6 foot piece of tubing here. So the tubing is not cheap. But for now, I'm going to use this and see if I can get it fit in the airplane. Now what I'm trying to figure out is there's all of these bolt hole markings that we put in here, holes that we put in this support, which is where you're supposed to bolt the bottom of that tube to. It looks like that support should go, I don't know, maybe here or just in front of here, because again, you've got the seat back that curves back in, and you want your back support to be pretty close to where this is, or this is going to start digging into your lower back. But then the other thing I'm trying to figure out is I've got the corner supports which need to go here, and then there's a little tube that comes off of there and supports the corner of this tubing. So if I start putting this back into here about where it should go, we need to figure out what angle this needs to be adjusted to. Now it seems like it should be about here, actually behind the canopy. Now I found out when I sat in the airplane that my shoulders do not want to go behind this here, so my shoulders have to be right in front of here, and this back support has to support my back at a point where my shoulders miss the canopy edge here, because otherwise that would start to get very painful if I started hitting my shoulders on there. So I'm going to work on making the brackets that go here in the corner, and we'll try and get to the point where I think what I'm going to do is bolt this to the bottom first, and then start working on these corner pieces, and then I'll put a support underneath here and see if I can make mock up some kind of backrest that attaches to here with, I don't know, tape and cardboard. I'm not really sure. So that I can actually sit in the airplane and actually figure out where this should be in relation to the back corners here, so we can make the tubes that attach this to these corner supports. So let me go make these corner supports and see if I can get the holes drilled in the bottom of this tube, and we'll go from there. I got a little bit further on the seat back here. What I did is I cut off the end of this tube at the length in the plans. I think it's 480 millimeters. And I angled it at the bottom at what I thought was a good angle based on where the top of the seat ended up here and where I thought the back would be and where my shoulders would be. So I actually went on the internet and looked at a bunch of images of people sitting in their CriCris on the internet just to try and have a reference. So I think it's good. That's where I'm going to stick it. And I decided to mount it just in front of, or at least at the first hole, just in front of the seat back here. I do have a hole right here, but it's actually right where the seat, right where the seat pan is, so it actually interferes with it, which isn't great. But I just went one forward, and I know the seat back is going to slope back, so I think that's a good place for it to be, especially if your lower back is down here at the back of the seat pan. You want support right at that point, so I think that's good. We'll go from there. I went ahead and drilled the holes, just marked them through the hole here, drilled a hole through, and stuck it in here and put the bolt through. So that's in, and it actually holds this in by itself. And so what I'm working on next is these corner braces. So these corner braces actually attach to the top of the rear fuselage on top of frame 7 here. I drilled out the 2 rivets that are there for that were 3/32 rivets like these. I think we have to put 1/8 inch rivets in here, and there's a couple rivets that need to go in here. This is what this bracket looks like. I cut this out on the CNC machine and then just bent it. This is 63 thousandths, so I did anneal right where I was going to bend it, and was able to get a fairly sharp bend that way, which is kind of nice because they didn't quite fit with a large radius bend. But anyway, I was able to get these to fit really well. I got to drill rivet holes here, rivet holes on top where the existing ones are in the top of frame 7. So I'm going to go ahead and get these installed and actually just see if I can get the straps made that attach to the seat back and see if I can get the tubes that connect to these corner braces here. I think what I'm going to do is just mount this where I think it should go. I'll have to sit in the airplane afterwards and figure out if it needs some adjustments, but there's no dimensions in the plans for how long the tube should be that connects from here to there. It's just supposed to be, do whatever you think is right for your own comfort. So so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get these installed right now and then start working on the tubes in the corner and just see if I can get the seat back attached, so I at least have some reference. I got to sit in it, with a seat back in it and see how the fit is and kind of go from there. If I have to make new tubes that go to the corners, that's what I'll do. I pop-riveted in both of these corner supports for the seat back, and what I did now is I just cut out my first one of these straps that is supposed to go around the tube on the seat back. It's supposed to be one in the corner here. It's supposed to wrap around, and then this is what bolts to a small piece of tubing that connects between here and this corner support. So I'm going to try and bend this. I'm just going to, I think, bend the ears up here a little bit and then see if I can wrap it around the tube and see if it fits. It's going to have to be a bit of trial and error. I tried to do it to the correct dimensions of the circumference of the tube from the where this bend is here, this angle is here, to the other side here. So that's where I should be able to just bend it at I don't know, maybe 70 degrees or something like that, and see if we can wrap it around a tube. So the first seat back tube clamp came out absolutely perfect. So what I had is a slightly thicker wall 3/4 inch tubing scrap that I had from, I'm not exactly sure what it from, actually it was probably from this tube here in the rear of the fuselage, I'm assuming. But what I did is I just bent it around this by hand until I got to the point where I could pull these ears together enough to get it in a vise, and then I pinched these together in a vise until it bottomed out, and so I'd have a very nice tight round fit. So this worked good. I'm going to go ahead and make another one and see if I can get the seat back hoop reinstalled in here with these on it, and then we'll start taking some measurements to connect these clamps here to these side supports. So I tried to flatten the first tube that's going to connect here and come up to the clamps that we just made. Yeah, this didn't work at all. So this is actually 0.049. So this is I guess 2 millimeter thick. No, I'm sorry, 1 millimeter thick material instead of 0.5 millimeter thick material. And you can see it actually cracked it here, even though I put a bunch of tape on here, and it cracked both sides. So this may be too thick to try and do what I'm doing here as far as flattening this all the way. I'm going to attempt to do it again, but I am going to anneal it this time and see if I can flatten it without it cracking on the sides or across here. And yeah, we'll give it one more go. I've got a couple extra pieces. This tubing was actually the same tubing that I used here for these flight controls, the aileron flight controls, and I figured, well, I'll just use the same thing. And the reason I got this is that they were out of stock on the smaller thickness size, so I was going to attempt to use this thinking these small little pieces as far as weight isn't going to be that big a deal. So let me try this one more time with annealing it, and I'll let you know how it goes. So this was try number 2 after annealing it, and you can see it actually did pretty well here where it didn't crease or break here. Part of that was because what I did is I put a piece of 20 thousandths in the vise that covered this area so that the vise itself was just pushing against that 20 thousandths and rounding it here, which actually worked really well. However, the rest of it still looks terrible. Surprisingly enough, it even cracked here in the center, flattening this. So not only did it flatten on the edges or crack on the edges here, it actually cracked in the center, which is interesting. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this because I don't know of any other way to get this flat and make this work. I can try annealing it again, but I still don't think this is going to do well. I do have a piece of 35 thousandths that's not 35 thousandths thick material that I can test possibly. I had a leftover piece from something else that's too short, but I could do some test bends with that and see if that is any better. But yeah, this isn't working, so let me go figure out what to do. Okay, so this was the 3rd attempt. I did try this one more time. Now I did go back to the plans to figure out what this tube is supposed to be because I realized after I started this process that I wasn't sure any longer what was actually the recommended tube in the plan. So what they tell you to do is a 60-61, 1 millimeter thick and 3/8 diameter, or 10 millimeters in diameter. This is the closest thing, is 3/8. This is not 0.35, which would be 0.9 millimeters. This is actually 0.049, which is closer to, I don't know, 1.4 millimeters, so it's a little bit thicker. Now, this did work pretty well. I mean, it didn't crack here, and it actually didn't crack on the edges here either. I did get some minor cracking that you can see across the center here. And what happens is when you flatten it, the center part actually becomes concave, where it's actually crushed itself past being flat, which, you know, I think that's part of the reason that we get a little bit of cracking in here, but it's very, very minor. And of course we're going to round off the end of this, so I think because the integrity of the bend here and the flange here and the bend on the other side and even the edges is good, I'm not going to worry about the little bit of minor cracking I ended up with on the very tip. So I'm going to say that this worked. Now what I had to do is I had to anneal this 3 times. So I annealed it, I put it in the vise, I bent it a little bit, I pulled it out of the vise, I annealed it again, bent it a little bit more, pulled it out of the vise, annealed it one last time, and then crushed it the rest of the way. That was the only way I could get this to work. Now, the reason that works is supposedly each time you anneal it, you're taking the stresses out of it that you've put into it by bending it. So theoretically, you can bend it a little bit further then without it cracking. So annealing it 3 times did seem to work. At least it worked well enough for me. So I'm going to go ahead and take the other pieces that I have and see if I can successfully repeat this process. I think the major issue that I really have is making sure that I can repeat this process on the same part on both ends, because I might get one end right, but if the other end cracks, then the whole piece has got to be thrown away. So this is going to take a little bit more trial and error, and hopefully I can get 2 of these that come out right. So let me go and see if I can bend the ends of 2 more so that we can get a start here, and we'll go from there. I thought I'd show you real quick here in the vise what I'm doing with these. So you can see this one here. What I've done is I've annealed this, crimped it, annealed it, crimped it again. And so I'm going to go anneal it one more time and flatten this one. And you can see how I've got it in the vise. I put this in the back here just to make sure that this stays flat against the back, and will bend out as this other side is flattened, because we need a flat spot to bolt that to on the airplane. But you can see in between there I've got a 20 thousandths just scrap piece that I stuck in the front here to keep this vise from digging too much into the tube at the bend point, and then I'm just flattening it against this solid bar that I just have on the back side of the vise. So let me go do this process one more time. This is time consuming, but I think it's worth it if I end up with a good bend. So let me finish the last two bends I need to do on this one. I did want to point out I actually am annealing these 4 times. So I got down to this point on both of these tubes, and I got a little scared that it might crack. So I went ahead and annealed it one more time. Now this one I finished already, and it came out perfect. So very pleased with this one. So I think I'm going to continue to just use that procedure, is just do it, anneal it 4 times. I think that's just the safest way to make sure that these aren't going to crack. And what's interesting is I didn't get any cracks in this one at all, any superficial ones at the end at all. And I even went back and just flattened this a little bit more on the edges with a hammer. So it seems really good. So let me finish this one, and I'll see if I can measure and figure out where the other ends need to be bent. Well, I got one of these finished, and it turned out perfect. The other one, I finished the one end, and I went to finish this end, and this one cracked, and this one cracked a lot. It's not only cracked on the end in 2 spots, but this one actually cracked. I don't even know if you can see it. There's actually a hairline crack all the way across there. It's very weird. And it cracked all the way around the corner and all the way down this side. Very strange. Now, again, this was hours worth of work. This one's garbage, and now I don't have any more tubing left. So, yeah, fun times. I guess I'm going to see if I can get some more tubing, and we'll try this again. Well, I appear to have recovered a little bit. So what I did is I found some 3/8 tubing that I had, and I think it was left over from the nose gear assembly. That was 0.065 wall. And what I did is, because I have a lathe and I have drill bits, I went ahead and drilled out the center of it. I think I used a 1/4 inch and then a 7/64 bit, which got me really close to 0.050. 0.052, somewhere in there. So I was close to 0.049. So I decided to go ahead and use this and try and create one more. So I did flatten one end of it. It came out perfect. I'm going to try and do the other end and see if I can be successful. But if I'm able to flatten the other end without it cracking, this will work. So I'm very happy that I didn't have to go back to Aircraft Spruce and try and get some more material. So yeah, let me try and flatten the other end here, and we'll see how it goes. Well, I was successful on this redo here with the 60 thousandths material that I cut down to 50 thousandths. So this turned out good. It looks as good as the other one. Ends came out really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes in this, and we'll Cleco it into the airplane. In fact, I've already got the other one in there right now. I'll show you in a minute. Well, I've run into a dilemma of trying to get the sling seat back made for my seat here. So I tried to find somebody locally who would be able to sew Dacron or nylon fabric. I've tried to contact even sailboat sail repair and manufacturing places to see if they would sew something for me, because the material that you use here is supposed to be recommended in the plans of I believe it's a 4-ounce Dacron. Now, I actually purchased some 4-ounce Dacron, which is this material here. Now, 4-ounce Dacron it doesn't feel that thick, but this is very, very, very plasticky. You can even hear it. It feels like a really, really stiff plastic. This was folded when it was shipped in the mail, and it actually creases, and I'm not so sure I can even get some of that out. But anyway, I tried to find somebody who would sew this, and I couldn't find anybody locally who would do it. I tried several places over the internet, and either they were interested until they actually found out what it was and did a little more research, and then they ghosted me, or like I said, I even contacted sailboat sail repair manufacturers, because this is sailboat sail fabric. And they just weren't interested in doing something that was a small project like this. So I've run into some issues trying to figure out how to get a seat made. Now, with that said, I've come up with an idea. Now, this is kind of a silly idea, but I figured, well, if I have a wheelchair wheel for a nose wheel on this airplane, maybe I should have a Canoe seat as my seat in the airplane. So what I did is I actually ordered one of these seats. It's basically like a stadium seat that's designed either for, you can use it if you go to the stadium to go watch a game or something like that, but it's really designed for like a canoe or kayak type of seat. And this actually isn't the first time I have bought this seat, because originally I thought maybe I could take the fabric off of here because it's a very nice nylon or polyester fabric. I'm not exactly sure. It seems like it's sewn really well. And I thought, well, maybe this tube that goes through this seat here is the same size as the tube that I made for the CriCri, seeming that way according to the dimensions of this online. This said this was 16.5 inches wide, which is almost identical to the tube width that I have there for the seat tube that I made. But when I actually got the seat in, it turned out that this seat is about 3/4 of an inch narrower. So there's no way to take this fabric off, and I wasn't even sure that even if I drilled the rivets out of the bottom here where the hinges are, that I could even get this fabric off of this tube. So anyway, that didn't end up turning out being a good solution, so I ended up returning the seat. But what I've done now is I've bought another one. Because what I'm actually thinking of doing is using the full seat back, including the hoop, the hoop itself that supports the seat. And after doing some measurements, it turns out that this seat is about 3/4 of an inch narrower. Now, this is 3/4 inch tube here, this is 3/4 inch tube, this is aluminum, and this is steel, so this is heavier. But what happens here is this seat, if I use this seat back, like I said, it's 3/4 of an inch narrower. So if you basically took this tube and you set it on top of this support flange here on either side, that's equal to the width of the Canoe seat that I got. Well, what I'm thinking of doing then is if I take the hinges off the bottom of those tubes, I can make some insert brackets made out of aluminum that would go around this support here that I can then put a bolt through, and I can actually use the hoop and the fabric from this Canoe seat as a seat for my airplane. It's actually got spots on the top where I can actually use these exact same 3/4 inch clamps that I already made, and other than it being a little bit narrower and it's just a tiny bit shorter, it seems like it's going to fit just fine. Now, would I recommend this? Probably not. But like I said, I'm running into an issue where I don't really have much of a solution to solving this problem, and this seems like a really nice seat. It's actually got padding in it here, it's got lumbar support here, it's got additional padding here, it's got some additional supports, it's got the strap support across the back. It actually connects around the top of the tube, which is kind of nice. I will have to run the seat belts over the top, but I have seen builders either run them slightly through here over the top, but this seat's slightly shorter, so I think it'll reach the seat belt bracket just fine. And then, like I said, on the bottom here, on the bottom here, I believe what I can do is drill out these rivets. We'll pop the little cap off here, and I can make an aluminum insert to go in here with fingers that come off with a bolt hole that comes through, and I can connect it right on either side, right where that bolt hole is right there. So I think this might work. It's a little bit of a heavier solution, but it seems like it's going to look nice. And if it even just gets me by between now and when I fly the airplane, so I can get in and out of the airplane, test out the seat, test out the fit. I've got to finish the fit of the fuel tank up here. And so I got to be able to get in and actually sit in this seat as it's going to be, when the airplane's finished. So I'm going to do this even if it's just temporarily. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on drilling out these rivets here. I'll pop these caps off, and I'm going to see if I can make some brackets and see if I can get this seat back attached to the seat bottom there and to the backrest supports up here at the top. Well, I drilled out the rivets on the bottom that held the seat back onto the bottom at its hinged point, so you can see now what this looks like. I did have to cut the strap that went around the back, which actually provided the support for adjustments when it was the back was not connected to anything except a strap that would hold it up. So anyway, whoops. You can see that this will basically fit right about there. And like I said, I can raise it up just a little bit, probably with the standoffs that I have, but it's almost exactly the same size other than being slightly narrower. I actually think this might work pretty well. So I'm going to keep going here. I'm just going to pop these caps off the bottom here and see if I can make some aluminum fittings that will fit down around that support down there and slip up into the bottoms of these tubes, and see if I can get a bolt or a rivet or something that I can connect those to the tubes on the end here. So let me go ahead and keep working on this a bit more. Let's see what it looks like. here's what I came up with to attach the seat back that I purchased. So what I did is, this is a 3/4 inch solid 2024 rod, and I went ahead and put it in the lathe and milled it down until this fit inside of the tube that is for the seat back. And then I cut the bottom here at the angle that the tube was cut, that was previously in there for the seat, and cut this down to about half its width, and then drilled a hole through it where the hole is supposed to go. So this is just the basic, test fit setup here. What I'm going to end up doing is drilling out the center of this to lighten it, because it's quite heavy right now. I'm probably going to flatten a spot on this side for the bolt to go through, so we'll thin down that half moon shape there on the bottom. The only other thing I did notice is that when I do install this, the rivets do rub on either side of this, so I'm going to have to take down a little bit of material on each edge, probably when I square up the bottom and put this flat face on the side here. But that's just because these holes here for the attachment of the seat back are in between the rivets on those angles on the side of the seat tray. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and install these back on the seat back, and I'll get the seat back installed, and we'll actually do I'll show you what it looks like when it's done, so you can see, and I'll actually test sitting in it to see how it fits and how it feels. Well, here's the seat back in its installed configuration. I did have to do some adjustments to these tubes on the back here, as far as bending those little tabs one way or another, just to get the angles correct for this and to make sure they were sitting flat. Back there in the rear brackets, I also put black tape on top of this metal tube to try and keep the paint from getting scraped off. But it's installed, it's sturdy. You can see the brackets that I made to attach down there on the seat that I still have to do some work on. You can also see if there's a little gap here, that's because this is sitting on top of the rivets. It's actually quite stiff right now, so there is a little bit of stretch that you can get to pull this apart. But I think once I get that below, or cut out so that it fits around the rivets, it'll loosen up just a little bit. But it looks great. I don't really have any complaints about it. The seat belt attachment back here seems to line up pretty well with the back of the seat. It's still below it. And of course I could, after I haven't sat in this yet, but after I sit in it, there's a possibility I might want to actually lower it a little bit more. I do have some adjustment on these here, because what I can do is just put this back on the lathe and cut this down further and allow that part that slips into the tube to just be a little bit longer, and I can lower it, I don't know, maybe half an inch or so more. But yeah, I can't complain about this. This seems like a really good solution, as long as this fabric holds up. But it seems like it's made pretty well. It is double stitched all the way across the sides and the top and the bottom. Like I said, it's got padding built into it. This cost me $40. It cost me $40 for that seat that I took apart to use for this. I spent more on the couple yards of Dacron fabric that I bought to actually make a seat, even though there was more fabric there than I needed. And obviously I would have paid somebody way more than that to sew something for me. So I'm not so sure this isn't too bad as a solution. I actually really like this. I'm going to hop in it now and see how comfortable it actually is. Yeah, Canoe seat. So we've got like I said before, we've got a wheelchair nose wheel and a Canoe seat in here, so a kayak seat. So anyway, let me hop in the airplane here and let me see how this actually fits. I just sat in this seat for about, 10 minutes, just trying to feel the fit again. I'm very happy with this seat back. I have no issues with it at all. It seems to fit perfectly. Where it's set up right now seems to be the right place. So I think I'm just going to continue finishing up the things I was going to finish here, and just finish and finalize the seat installation. So when you sit in the seat, just to kind of comment on some of this, believe it or not, I cannot understand how this sheet metal bent pan is actually comfortable. But when you sit down in here with your butt, your back is up against the back of the seat here, which flexes. Your legs are up against here, and for some reason that is very comfortable. I didn't even feel like I need a pad. I could install a pad in here just kind of as a cushion, but it doesn't even feel like it's necessary for some reason. The only place that you do feel a little bit of pressure is on the front of the seat here with your legs. Now that might be because of where I have my feet placed in the front there with the pedals, and maybe I do need to move that pedal tray back one notch just to keep my knees up a little bit higher. It's hard to tell. But when I sit in this seat, the things that I notice is that if I arch my back backwards, I can feel this bar here. And I have seen other CriCri builders that have put some kind of pad across this, because obviously if this sags enough, your back will hit this this bar in the back. And the nice thing about this Canoe seat is that this bar is actually curved a little bit, whereas with the CriCri design, it's not designed to have a curve to it, but it is supposed to kick back a little bit further. I think the bends on the side here on the seat the seat frame that I took out were bent back considerably further, so that this would end up further away from your back. But I don't feel like this is going to be a problem unless this really stretches out enough to where I'm hitting this with my back. Now, I've got clecos in here at the top. If I'm sitting in this seat properly, my head does not touch these clecos, but if I tip my head back, I will touch these clecos with the back of my head. So my head is going to be very, very close to the top of the canopy when the canopy is installed. Here on the edge of this rear deck support, if I turn my shoulders one way or another, I will hit this with each one of my shoulders if I turn just a little bit. So my shoulders are going to sit just in front of here within the opening here of the canopy, which is good. That's where it should be. So I'm not too concerned about that because I want to get back as far as possible anyway. I don't want to have to push the seat up any further or extend these anymore because I just don't think it's necessary. Now, what I did notice here is operating the throttle controls. The knobs are removed, but operating these throttle controls is actually quite difficult because you find out when you're sitting in the seat here that you can't turn your elbows. In other words, your elbows have to stay tight up against your body and slide back and forth. And when you go to grab these, you want to kick your elbow out, which you can't do. So, using the throttle controls almost seems to be, needing to use, your pinkies or something similar to this motion, because again, you can't kick your elbow out. You're going to keep your elbow next to your side, which is a little bit weird. Also, actuating the trim lever here is a little bit difficult because again, you've got to move your shoulder way back to be able to reach this to push it forward. You don't realize how, when you're sitting in the seat, how far forward your hands actually are. The stick operation seems perfectly fine. I don't see any issues with that. So, and believe it or not, this is actually quite comfortable to sit in as long as you're not hitting your elbows or your head or something else because you're turning or not in the proper hand on the stick position. It's quite comfortable. So, anyway, I just wanted to point out a few of those things. I don't think I'm going to right now worry about lowering the seat at all. I could, and it's possible that would get this bar down a little bit further and less likely that when you arch your back you're going to hit it. But again, I think I'm close to or slightly lower than the original frame seat anyway, so I think for now I'm going to leave it. I can always come back and cut these down if I need to at any point. So I think for now I'm just going to go with this and leave it how it is. And like I said, it is quite comfortable. Even with where this support is here, this back support, it ends up feeling like it's in the right place. So I'm going to keep finishing up the seat installation here. I'll show you what it looks like when I get done. Yeah, I can't think of anything else to talk about with the seat. There is actually a lot of space behind here. I don't know if you can see back here, but now I might end up putting a tank back there, like a smoke tank, because I would like to have a smoke system on this airplane. So I might actually figure out if I can install a smoke tank. It would be nice actually if somehow this seat would disconnect and you could actually flip it forward, which is possible with these pivots on the bottom. I'd have to round them off so that they allowed that motion, but that's the only thing about the seat that I was thinking would be nice to have, is to be able to actually move the seat forward or flip it forward so that you could access things in the back, because there is a lot of storage even back there. If you want to put a sleeping bag back there, or you want to put some clothes back there, it's quite a large space. So I'm gonna have to think about that. I can't think of anything else I would put back there other than either an auxiliary fuel tank, a small one, like I've talked about before, like a taxi tank, for example, just to get maybe an extra half a gallon, maybe a gallon of gas at most that could be burned off fairly quickly with the turbines that I'm using. So Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Well, the seat doesn't look much different, but I did finish these support brackets down here for the bottom of the seat. I drilled the holes out for the bolts that actually attach the steel tube to the aluminum brackets that I made. I also finished hollowing out these fittings here so that they're considerably lighter than they were. I did cut out the outside of this to be able to support putting a nut on the other side of here. I think I kept these flanges around 4 millimeters thick. I figure that's more than plenty for supporting this compared to what was there before. You know, plus I have downward support now on the center of the seat on top of this rail, and support on this little flange that's there down on the rail, and then it's attached to here, so it's more than enough support for the seat. I'm not going to go any further with the seat at this point because I've got everything fit, and the seat's going to have to come out again because I might be working behind the seat for a little bit. This rear deck back here, I'm thinking of actually painting this before I pop rivet this this canopy that's on the back part here. Just because it's difficult to get back here and clean, and I'd like to just have it nice and finished and just painted. You know, I think I'm just going to use like a silver color similar to the aluminum look, but it'll keep it from getting dirty and tarnished back there, and I can, you know, stick a rag back there and clean back there if I need to. So what I will do though is let me take the seat apart enough, and I'll get one of these fittings out so you can just see what the final fitting ended up looking like. I still have a little bit of cleanup that I can do on them, but the actual fit and milling and stuff that I was going to do to them is finished. So yeah, I'm going to call the seat finished at this point, but let me show you what these fittings ended up looking like. So here's what the final fitting looks like. You can see I you know, cut the outside edge of this where the head of the bolt will go through. Well, actually, this will be the nut side because the other side here is where the head of the bolt will actually be on the inside of the seat. But I left this a 4 millimeter flange that sticks out here. This rests right on top of that rail, and then the rail also rests, you know, right on this surface here. So it's got a lot of support. I did have to, you can see, narrow it here and on the other side here because of the rivets that are on this rail down here. So I don't know if you can see them, but you know, we've got rivets with the bolt holes spaced for the seat to fit into like this. So I had to make sure it fit in between there. So I narrowed it just a little bit. I did bore out the center of it, you know, all the way down to almost the top here to try and get rid of as much material as I could, just to lighten it. But I still left it plenty thick. I mean, it's fairly light, so I'm not too worried about that. But I do have some you know, tool mark cleanups to do on here, and you know, polish this up a little bit, and I'll probably just aladine this as I do everything, and these will be ready to go. So with minor cleanup, the seat will be done, and I can finish up working on the next things I need to finish, which at this point I've got to finish the fuel tank mold. So now that I've got the seat in here, I feel like I can put the foam tank back in here and just finish the final fit of that, and make sure that I can actually fiberglass and start working on the mold for that. And I'm also working on some of the other fiberglass molds for the wing tips and the horizontal stabilizer tips and a few other things. So that's it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.